Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to my 2024 library tour. In this episode, my cookbook collection, which is why I am out in the living room next to this bookcase, which has my cookbook collection on the lower two shelves. So let's get going. First up is a family cookbook. This is Grandma Orm's recipes. I received this for my last birthday. When my grandmother was alive, she would compile a cookbook for her granddaughters, and when they turned 18. And uh, last year for my birthday, my aunts made a copy of one of my cousins' collection of recipes and added some of their own for a little cookbook for me. The next two cookbooks are from Gourmet. Gourmet was, for a good chunk of the 20th century, one of the premier culinary magazines in the United States. In the late 2000s, Gourmet's corporate overlord, which I think was Condé Nast, bought out the corporate overlord for the other major culinary magazine in the United States, Bon Appetit. And Condé Nast decided that they only had enough room in their magazine portfolio for one of them, and it ultimately ended up being Bon Appetit. However, before Gourmet folded, its editor, final editor Ruth Reichel, compiled two large uh, collections of recipes throughout the whole history of Gourmet. The first one being the Gourmet Cookbook, the yellow covered one, which is one of my favorite cookbooks. I did a bookshelf essential video of this a few months ago, and this is one of my favorite cookbooks. I have cooked so many recipes from this collection. The other gourmet cookbook is Gourmet Today, which is the green covered one. I have just recently started focusing a bit more on this cookbook, and I have made two recipes, a black bean quesadilla and a fudge recipe, which was spectacular. Speaking of sweets, um, a theme in my cookbook collection is cookbooks centered on dessert or baking recipes. The first of them is Sweet Alchemy by Yigit Pura. Uh, Yigit Pura won the inaugural season of um, Top Chef's dessert spinoff. So when I first picked up this collection or this cookbook, I thought it was a bit too experimental and a bit too high end. But having giving it another look, I actually appreciate what Pura does, which is he presents a possibility with the first part of the book, the first chapters, recipes, that you can combine them into more interesting, more complex um, desserts in the final chapter. Although I haven't made anything from this cookbook yet, but I don't think they're as um, complex as I initially thought they were, although perhaps a bit more high end. Sticking with baking, this is Mooncakes and Milk Bread by Christina Cho. So this is a cookbook that centers on um, Asian baking. And I picked it up largely for the two recipes on the cover, mooncakes and milk bread. Milk bread is a type of bread that has become widely popular the last few years, and mooncakes are a Chinese confection eaten at the Mid-Autumn Festival that I have been wanting to try for years. Since I saw an episode of Ni Hao Kai Lan with my nieces. The next cookbook is sticking with Asian uh, Asian diaspora cuisine. This is Korean American by Eric Kim. Eric Kim is a food writer for the New York Times. At least I still think he is. Last time I checked, he was. So this is a cookbook that um, looks at uh, American-inspired Korean dishes or Korean-inspired American dishes. It's basically uh, the cuisine of the Korean diaspora in the United States. And I've haven't tried anything yet. I would like to. I would like to try the kimchi recipe and some of the dessert recipes. I do have a major sweet tooth. uh, Surprising nobody, I also have a cookbook from Texas, the Big Texas Cookbook from the editors of Texas Monthly. So this is a cookbook that looks at various Texan cuisines. Most people would think of Texas cuisine as sort of Mexican inspired or Southwest, but uh, Texas cuisine incorporates a lot of flavors from the various people who've made Texas home, including Mexican cuisine, Czech cuisine, German cuisine, Laotian and Vietnamese cuisine, and so this cookbook incorporates a lot of that. And what I really like about this cookbook is how it's organized. Um, so the chapters are like made in Texas, smoke signals, which are uh, like barbecue, con todo, home plates, on holiday, rise and shine, and there stands the glass. So I really love how that organization, rather than the traditional like types of ingredients. Cookbook returns to desserts. This is Sweet Enough by Alison Roman. Um, this cookbook deserves a bookshelf essential video. It is one of my favorite dessert cookbooks. It has a strawberry cake that I absolutely love. The old-fashioned strawberry cake. And it also has this cookbook also has a vanilla pastry cream, vanilla pudding recipe that I adore. So I really love this cookbook. Returning to Asian cuisine, I have the first of three Japanese cookbooks. The first is Make It Japanese by Ree McClinney with Senny Lemoyne. So this cookbook, I haven't tried anything from it yet, but there are quite a few recipes I would love to try, particularly the strawberry cake recipe in here. Going back to baking, the next cookbook is Crumbs and Doilies by Cupcake Gemma. So Cupcake Gemma has a YouTube channel, and she is the proprietor of the bakery Crumbs and Doilies. Um, and I'm a fan of her channel, and when she announced that she had a cookbook coming out, I wanted it, and eventually I picked up this copy from Book Depository, which was for a while the way you get um, books from the UK here in the United States. And I've been meaning to try quite a few of the recipes in here. I've tried the lemon curd and um, the cereal fun bar, although it did not quite turn out how I had hoped. Um, Next is We're in the City by Joanne Weir. So, this is a cookbook that came out several years ago, I think probably more than a decade. I first encountered Joanne Weir through PBS. She has a number of cooking shows. Um, I don't know if she has any still in production. I haven't looked because unfortunately at PBS it's never quite set what any PBS station has. But anyway, so I won a cookbook by her, and I was drawn to this one largely because she has in the introduction um, a section on sort of the essential pantry for various styles of cuisine or um, sort of regional cuisines. And I thought that was really interesting. This is The New Spanish Table by Anya von Bremsen. So this is a cookbook that looks at Spanish cuisine, both in its traditional form as well as its more contemporary, innovative form. Uh, Spanish cuisine is one of the most innovative cuisines from the past like half century or so. And I checked this out of the library like many years ago and I loved it and I wanted to have it in my collection. The next cookbook is another baking book. This is Capriol's Dessert by Capriol Pence and Melissa Carey, who was the pastry chef at Capriol's one of Capriol's restaurants in the early 2000s. So I first encountered Capriol. I think she was doing some cooking show in a studio that was made to look like an apartment. And I thought she looked like an actress. I'm blanking on her name. But, and then her and her husband did a cooking show uh, like about a decade ago where they cooked several dishes together and then did a field trip to various local culinary spots in the Pacific Northwest. And I'd wanted a cookbook from them for a while, and I saw this cookbook and I eventually picked it up, and I'm very happy that I did. This cookbook has um, a chocolate chip cookie recipe that is amazing, and oh, the German chocolate cake recipe in this one is so good, so good. Next is Big Little Recipes by Emma Lepperook. Um, so this is another cookbook that was bought from or inspired by YouTube. Food 52 has a YouTube channel, and for a few years, Emma Lepperook did a series called Little Big, in which she made recipes that had few ingredients and also were um, designed for a smaller amount of diners, which is largely why I picked this up. And so far, my experience with this cookbook is a bit hit or miss. There are several recipes I would still like to try, but the ones that I have tried haven't quite worked out how I would like them to. Speaking of YouTube, this is Preppy Kitchen by John Cannell. So there's a YouTube channel called Preppy Kitchen in which John Cannell makes dishes 2 times a week. And um, a few years ago, this cookbook came out and I picked it up. I don't remember if I pre-ordered it or if I waited, but I really wanted it because I really like his channel. And I like how this cookbook is organized because it's seasonal, uh, which is quite nice. And it also introduced me to the glories of sriracha. This is the complete cooking for two um, from America's Test Kitchen. So this is the first cookbook I bought in this new cookbook collection. Um, and I picked it up largely because I wanted to cook for two people because it is me and my mom. And so I picked this up. Um, I haven't tried as many recipes from this cookbook as I would have liked. Although I do routinely make the scone recipe and the muffin recipe, although instead of currants and blueberries, I have substituted chocolate chips. And someday I will make some of the slow cooker recipes. Um, Back to baking with Dory by Dory Greenspan. I so want to try the lemon cake in this rest cookbook. This is the Cook You Want to Be by Andy Baragani. Um, Andy Baragani it was a writer for an editor for Bon Appetit who appeared on their YouTube channel um, up to about 4 years ago. Um, and about the time this cookbook came out, and I, well, no, maybe it's a bit later than that, but I really like him, Andy Baragani, and I really wanted this cookbook and quite happy to have it. It has a chicken recipe um, that I absolutely adore. Um, the sticky sweet roast chicken, which I have actually I've made it once and it turned out really well, but the technique of how the chicken is roasted is has basically become my go-to for roasting a whole chicken, and it turns out perfect every time. So there's so many more recipes I want to try from that cookbook. Uh, so next is Martha's Baking Handbook. So this is another book that, if I haven't given it a bookshelf essential, deserves it. Um, it is phenomenal. It has my go-to banana nut bread recipe and also coconut cream recipe, even though I don't quite make it how the recipe says it should be. But it turns out fantastic anyway. I still need to figure out how to make a pie though. Now this is Barefoot Contessa Family Style by Ina Garten. Um, this is a cookbook that I'd wanted for a while because it has a sort of a baked fried chicken recipe. And I like how this is styled as well as sort of the kind of meal rather than, like, again, the ingredients. This is another alumnus from Bon Appetit. This is Micacina by Rick Martinez. So this is a Mexican cookbook that looks at sort of divides, or the chapters are the various regions of Mexico rather than like types of ingredients, and I really like that. And it also has a great sort of basic recipes that include several styles of rice and tortillas and beans and refried beans, and yeah, it's really great. This is my favorite cookbook, Martha's American Food by Martha Stewart. So again, this is divided into like regions, um, and it is awesome. I have made so many recipes from here that I have loved. This is just a glorious, glorious cookbook. And soon I will be making some pound cakes from this cookbook. Chocolate chip pound cakes. No, the chip pound. Yeah. Uh, so next is the second of the three Japanese cookbooks I have, although this is the first that I picked up. This is Japanese Cooking, A Simple Art by Shizuo Suji. So this is where it all began for Japanese cookbooks in the United States. Um, I'm a bit mixed on it. Um, because I'm not entirely fond of how it's organized, because there's like the first part is the techniques, which includes a few recipes. And then there's the second part that has sort of the primary recipes. And that, I don't know. But yeah, but this is definitely um, a classic. While cooking, the complete cooking with two is the first cookbook from this kind of that formed this current collection. Um, The Glorious Foods of Greece by Diane Kokkilis was a mainstay of my first cookbook collection that I had when I was in college. Um, and I ended up getting rid of that cookbook as well as all of the other cookbooks I had at the time. But I've always wanted to have this back, and a few years ago I reacquired it. And again, this cookbook is divided by region. Um, Next is the first of the Chinese cookbooks I have. This is Kali Kwang's Simple Chinese Cooking. So this is Chinese Australian cuisine. Kali Kwang is a Chinese Australian chef, and I watched, I think, some of her cooking shows from the early 2000s or very early 2010s, and wanted to pick this cookbook up. Moving to the second shelf, hopefully, if you hear some bangs, it's the second shelf tends to have some issues with the book staying up. So first up is um, the Essential New York Times Cookbook, um, edited by Amanda Hesser. So this cookbook is the latest edition of the New York Times Cookbook. Um, about every 10 years or so, a new edition comes out, and this is the latest. And I'm really looking forward to exploring this cookbook in more depth because it is gigantic. The next two cookbooks are by Claire Seffitz, who again is a Bon Appetit alumnus. Her first book is Dessert Person. This is a phenomenal cookbook devoted to baking. It has a bun cake recipe that I absolutely adore. It's a um, almond poppy seed pound cake, or not pound cake, bun cake with orange glaze, and it is amazing. Claire Savage's most recent cookbook is What's for Dessert. Um, and I have tried the Meyer lemon um, bundt cake, and it is phenomenal, and also a apple galette, which is really good as well. Next is Basics with Babish by Andrew Rea. So this is a kind of a starter cookbook from the creator of the Babish culinary universe. And I'm really like the range of recipes in this cookbook. This is the Kosher Baker by Paula Scheuer, which I picked up from the University of Chicago Press's most recent sale. So I picked this cookbook up largely because the cake on the cover promises lots of bundt cakes, um, which I have rather become quite obsessed with over the last few months. Although there is a lavender cupcake I really want to try. See if I can find it real quick. Yeah. I probably will need to. Oh. Oh yeah. Oh. Oh yeah, they don't actually have a picture for it. But yeah, really want to try the lavender orange um, cupcakes. So next is Kung Food by John Kung. So this is a cookbook centered on the Chinese diaspora, particularly in the United States. Um, haven't tried anything from this cookbook yet. I just recently picked it up, but I'm quite looking forward to it. And finally, Simply Japanese by Miori Morata. So this is the third of the Japanese cookbooks I have, and one of the ones that I most recently picked up, and I am really looking forward to trying several of the recipes in here. So, yeah. So, anyway, BookTube, that was my cookbook collection as it stands for right now. I'm probably going to add some more over the course of the year. Certainly, there are two that I have pre-ordered. But yeah, for now, BookTube, thank you. Have a great afternoon. Well, as of right now, it's actually evening. So, anyway, BookTube, I will see you next time. So, until then, thank you. Have a great afternoon and stay safe.